Thank you for joining us, everybody. We are live. We have a special report here with the Laws That Matter, and we have some breaking news today and a great panel of guests. Well, first today we're going to talk about a lawsuit that the Humane Society of the United States has filed against the USDA regarding pandemic prevention hygiene, specifically avian and bird flu outbreaks. Then we're going to discuss wet markets and slaughterhouses. We have a panel of guests and experts there with Slaughterfree New York City and a documentary that's being done on the wet markets. Then we're going to talk about slaughterhouse workers and how it's a potential civil rights crisis that they're being forced to go back to work despite the numbers that they are getting sick and dying. And finally, we're going to end with some good news. So with me today, first is Laura. She's one of the staff attorneys at the Humane Society of the United States who is behind the lawsuit that you all filed against the USDA last week, which is breaking news. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that lawsuit, Laura?
Yes, thanks for having me, Carissa. So in broad terms, the lawsuit challenges the environmental assessment that USDA's Animal and Health Plant Inspection Service, or APHIS, put together when conducting their plan to control highly pathogenic avian influenza in U.S. poultry operations. So to dive in and unpack that a little bit, highly pathogenic avian influenza is a form of bird flu that is highly contagious and can be extremely deadly. So we have seen outbreaks here in the United States over the past several decades. So in 2009, there was an outbreak of bird flu that caused the death of hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And then an outbreak occurred in 2014 and 15 that resulted in the death of 50 million birds. And so in response to that outbreak, APHIS developed a plan to help control future outbreaks. And so the lawsuit is challenging that plan.
So I have two questions to follow up on that. The first one is this coming at the heels of COVID, or is this a coincidence?
It's a little bit of a coincidence. We have had this lawsuit in the works for a while. The plan was finalized in 2015. And so we had been working on challenging the plan ever since it was finalized. And so it just happened to come at the heels of COVID. And it just makes it so much more apparent that it's so much more important to prevent these types of outbreaks from occurring in the first place. And APHIS's plan, unfortunately, doesn't do anything to prevent these types of outbreaks.
Well, and it's interesting timing because there was just an outbreak in South Carolina about a week ago of bird flu, and then all during the coronavirus, we've had about 3 or 4 global outbreaks. So it seems to me that it's quite timely. What is it that the USDA is doing now versus what it is that you're asking them to do?
Yeah, that's correct. The day after we filed the lawsuit, there had been an outbreak, I believe in South Carolina, and 30,000 turkeys were depopulated. And so what APHIS does is
depopulation for a second. A lot of social media, not even social media, mainstream media is using this terminology, which I find really offensive for us. I mean, depopulation, meat packing industries, meat processing plants. I mean, let's call it what it is. You know, slaughterhouses, they're killing the birds because they didn't treat them right, and now they're really ill and they can infect humans. I mean, this whole depopulation lingo, which is all over the news, and that's the lingo, but it allows for 6 degrees of separation for us to separate emotionally what's really going on, right?
Yeah, it's definitely in reality mass killing. And another term that's used a lot in relation to depopulation is euthanasia. And there's no humane way of killing birds in such mass. And so, right, euthanasia is good killing. And so it really isn't a form of euthanasia, it's a form of mass killing. How birds are killed in this plan is usually one of 2 ways. Either a form of firefighting foam, water-based foam, is sprayed over the birds and they suffocate to death. In addition, so imagine birds in mass warehouses, right? You have tens of thousands packed in these facilities. And there's fans, giant industrial fans that are on to maintain temperature and help to filter dust and ammonias and other gases outside of the barn. And a way to kill the birds rapidly is just turning off those fans. This is called ventilation shutdown, or VSD. And this will essentially cook the birds to death, overheating them until, or, they suffocate on dust and debris and the gases that build up. So it's really, really inhumane ways of killing birds in a large population.
So I guess the way that they're killing them now, the argument is this can lead to an avian flu outbreak and is negligent and gross negligence, and right? What's the argument right now?
So the argument is actually in the manner in which they conduct these killings, right? There's not a humane way to do it, but there's a more humane way to do it, and that's using nitrogen-filled gas, which will make the birds unconscious before they suffocate. So it's a little bit, more humane than having them suffocate. Unfortunately, right, when we are packing so many hundreds of thousands of animals together, there's going to be a risk of disease spread. And the more tightly packed animals are, the higher the risk. And so what the main thrust of the lawsuit is to try and get USDA to encourage and incentivize farmers to not tightly pack these animals into cages that create this problem in the first place. So how they can do this is through their control plan. When a flock is identified as being at risk or infected, and the flock is killed, USDA will indemnify the farmer, right? Pay them for the loss of those birds. And so we've asked, as part of an alternative plan, to condition those payments on implementing methods that would help to mitigate the risks of further disease. So this would include getting birds out of cages and getting them more space. Because, just like in humans, the more distance that you have, the less in degrees of spread that you will see in the population.
Right, makes sense. So the right now we're supposed to practice some social distancing. So you're saying that the birds should be practicing some social distancing as well in order to prevent further human catastrophe. Because right now it is clear that we have a global health human crisis because of the way we've exploited animals for meat. Laura, tell us a little bit about your background. I know you're one of the attorneys at the Humane Society of the United States. How long have you been there? What led you to this position?
So I've been at the Humane Society 5 years today, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So I went to law school knowing that I wanted to do animal protection litigation. I went to Vermont Law School, graduated in 2013, and entered the law practice at HSUS, really focusing on puppy mill issues. And now I'm expanded into farm animal protection. I've also had the opportunity to teach animal law seminars. I currently teach at George Mason University, and being able to sort of spread the message and train new law students in this field is another great passion of mine.
So with this lawsuit that you guys just filed against the USDA, are you the main person behind it, or are you the spokesperson for today?
We are actually the main person behind it. In 2015, when public comments were open on this plan, the Humane Society was one of 3 commenters. So 2 other entities submitted comments. which is unusual because when you have animal-related government actions, we can see tens of thousands of comments being submitted. And so we are really the ones marching along and fighting this fight when it comes to trying to not allow the government to continue funding harmful practices.
Right. Okay, because I'm looking in the lawsuit here, when we put it up on screen, it says that you're really focusing on the influenza side of it and the viruses. And I know when we spoke a second ago, you were talking about how there's no such thing as humane killing, but there's, you know, a more humane way to treat the animals before slaughter, giving them more space. But here it really is focused on contagion and influenza and bird flu and viruses. I know the lawsuit's been in the making for a while, but is that a coincidence, or is that argument really coming at the heels of COVID?
So we definitely tailored the argument to fit the reality of today, right? So it's been 5 years in the making, but obviously in the backdrop of what's happening, it became really apparent that there's much more the government can do to prevent outbreaks from occurring.
And what is the result that you're expecting from this lawsuit, and in what time frame?
So the result is hopefully a judge will rule that this was an unlawful plan and it violated the National Environmental Policy Act, so NEPA. So that's the challenge comes under the government's obligation to assess the environmental impacts of its plan. And so hopefully that will vacate this plan and it'll go back to notice and comment rulemaking, which will allow us to put further additional ideas for plans to help mitigate outbreaks and get animals in more humane conditions.
And what's the time frame of all of this? Like, how long will all this take?
Timing's difficult to say, right? Litigation can go on for a long time, and especially in this day, many civil actions are being either stayed or delayed. So it's hard to say. I mean, the government will have 60 days to respond. And then following that, we'll have the administrative record and then briefing. So it could go on for months, if not a year or longer. So it's always difficult to know when the final result will come for litigation.
Okay, well, thank you for what you guys are doing. You guys are always at the forefront of everything with animals, along with PETA and Slaughterfree New York City, who we're going to hear from today as well, and many other wonderful animal rights organizations. The next topic that we're going to move to is going to be the wet markets, specifically those that are happening in New York. New York has about 80 to 90 of them. Laura, I'd love for you to stay with us. I know that the Humane Society of the United States obviously has a stance on this, and anything that you guys are doing or any opinion that you may have, we'd love to hear from you as well. So our next guest is Jordan. Hi, Jordan.
Hello, how are you?
That's good. So Jordan is with Cavelight Films, and he made the documentary for the Save movement, which had over 14 million viewers, and is now working on, right, a documentary in New York, undercover investigative regarding wet markets that is yet to be released. But is going to show the realities, and the timing of this is quite special as well. Is this because of COVID, or?
Well, I mean, certainly there's an extra spotlight on it, but you know, we are documenting the work that other activists have been doing for quite a while. And you know, this issue, I'm pretty well versed on animal agriculture issues, and I've been doing this for many years, but I didn't even know how many wet markets or live markets were in New York City. I mean, it's really unreal. And not only is it a health issue, which is what we should be talking about, but going in them myself and seeing the work that Jill and other people have been doing to document this, it's really intense and unreal and awful what's happening in those wet markets. And it's just our job to document them as best we can and show the work that other activists are doing, which are just really amazing work.
So is that what Cavelight Films is for? Is it a production company to expose the injustices of animal cruelty?
Well, we're a production company that focuses on social impact issues, and my personal view, and what I like, and I think is one of the most important issues of our time, is animal agriculture. So I'm focused on that, and any issues that we can document and help, inform the public, that's what we're going to do.
Right. And how far along are you on this film?
Well, we've just started a couple weeks ago. I mean, we're in a great position where we can use the material that Jill Carnegie and Slaughterfree NYC and some of these other groups they're working with have already documented. So we're not starting from scratch. We're using their images and their story and putting it together in a way that I think will be interesting to a broader range of people that are not just vegan activists.
Okay. And how did you connect with Jamie Logan, who I know from before and worked with me at BVeg? I'm the founder, I'm an attorney of BVeg Vegan Certification Program, and Jamie worked with me and is going to continue to work with us. And she's a fabulous activist and puts her life at risk. She goes on the front lines. She captures videos. She does rescue. How'd you connect with her? So
we met at a march where we were documenting some of the activists there, and then ultimately she informed me about what was happening with the Save movement in Newark, New Jersey. So we brought a small camera crew there, and she was heavily featured in that particular short film. And then that got 14 million views. Exactly. And it was really just us documenting a day in the life of the work that these activists are doing week in and week out. And obviously, I saw that she also does a lot of video work, and we're aligned on this particular issue. So why not work together on our next film, which is this one? Mm-hmm. And Jamie, how's it going into these wet markets? How do you handle that over and over again as a vegan, as a sensitive person?
Absolutely. It is. I don't think ever it's easy. There is definitely a process of desensitizing yourself to this. Otherwise, you just go crazy. I mean, you walk in these spaces from smell to the dirt, bacteria, feathers, body parts all over the ground. It's traumatic really for anyone to see. And I think if more people are actually seeing this firsthand, I think we would start to see change faster. Right. I go in there for them, and I think as an activist with anything, we need to put our own discomfort aside and document for the animals, and that's what I do.
Okay, Jordan, did you hear? Was her sound off, or is it off in my ear?
It was a little broken up, but basically, what she's able to do, and what I haven't been doing for years, I sort of document from the outside looking in, and these activists are on the inside. And basically they're seeing the horrific conditions. They're seeing the unhealthy, sort of just gross conditions that are there. And they're able to help bring this, whether it's on social media, or whether it's, providing footage for news outlets, or ultimately providing footage that someone like myself would then use to give it even a bigger spotlight. So yeah, they're on the ground doing the work day in and day out. So great.
Yeah, I mean, the better footage we can get. Can you hear me now?
Not really.
Not really? Okay, let me try.
Yeah, the audio is not great, but I know, Jamie, that many times, she puts herself in harm's way, and where she could get arrested, and I wanted to talk to her about that. Any close calls, any arrests, any friends that have been arrested, because to be honest, we would not have the footage that we need if people like her would not go into these markets and get this footage. Like, I just did an interview last week with CBS News. I haven't been in the market. So I reached out to, James Velez Mitchell and Jill Carnegie and Edita and Donnie from Their Turn. And I needed to get the footage for the reporter. Same thing with
a lot of these reporters from these sort of reputable news outlets won't go to a disruption or some sort of activist situation where there might be an arrest. They're pretty worried about that, so they rely on that kind of footage because they just won't do it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. So Jamie, have you ever been arrested?
been very close, and if I'm arrested in probably a year, there's got to be something wrong with what I'm doing. Because literally, I mean, these actions, the point is to generate awareness. Now, it's not like let's just get arrested for the hell of it. Nobody wants to be arrested. I mean, this is affecting our records, our public records for the rest of our lives. However, if it's going to generate attention on action, absolutely. Arrest me, handcuff me, let's go. Like, this is about getting the information out there for the public, for the animals that are going through this, and to be able to get this specific footage that we need to get to companies like Cavelight, to get to the news. Just covering it more, let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to bring Jill on. Hi, Jill. Thanks for joining us. Jill's with Slaughterfree, New York. Jill, can you hear me? Your lips are moving, but I can't hear you. Okay. All right. So maybe I'm hoping that maybe you'll have a little bit better sound than Jamie. Jamie, maybe you want to try closing out any of the apps so we can hear you a little bit better on your computer. But Jill, I know that you guys all went undercover together last week, or Jamie went with you into the wet market. Perhaps you can give us a little bit insight with a little bit better sound of what you faced there. I mean, did you face opposition? Was it easy to get footage? Were people rude? What was it like?
Well, it really depends on the location. You know, as we've been saying, New York City is home to around 80 of these publicly accessible spaces, and the majority of them are independently operated. So as a result, you're going to have completely different situations in each one. So you really have to go in prepared to assess and prepare to maneuver to accommodate whatever the conditions might be that you're walking into. A few of the things that we have found are consistent across the board are that the majority of these places do not want any photos or filming taking place inside. And the owners typically will get more and more confrontational the more they think that you might be obtaining visual footage inside their establishments, which I find a little interesting because there's a lot of businesses out there, they want people to take photos, to take videos, to tag them on Instagram. You know, any other business that I can think of would welcome somebody going in to take pictures of what they do. And yet these places across the board want to minimize that.
So when you guys were doing the documentary last week and going into these wet markets, and was it just you and Jamie?
It was Jamie and Jordan, and Jamie was assisting Jordan on in more of a visible way. So she had like the large microphone and all of that. So we kind of went in with a two-pronged approach where I went in as I normally would, trying to be a little bit more under the radar and just sort of get in and see what I could get and get out. Whereas Jamie and Jordan were going in to see if anyone would speak with them as local press people. And, they got pushed out right away. I got some footage in both the locations we went to. I will say that in the first location, I made a bit of a rookie mistake. I think it was probably because we were all working together beforehand, so I was a little distracted. I had my video on selfie mode inside, so I had to quickly change that while I was in there. So unfortunately, I didn't get as much footage yesterday in the first location as normal, but fortunately over the years we've collected so much that one time making a little error is not going to be the end of it.
And did you get any good interviews?
Yeah, we actually spoke with the owner of the slaughterhouse. As soon as we walked in with the big camera, he came running over, pushed us out. It's like, get out of here. You're not allowed to film. You're not allowed to film. No surprise. So we ended up going on, and Jordan and I ended up speaking with the owner outside, and we were asking him questions as we were coming from a news company, asking him, are more people coming to your business, during the coronavirus? Are sales going up? What have you seen? Also, how have the USDA regulations, are conditions supposed to be more sanitary or whatnot? It's actually quite disturbing and shocking how many people were there online waiting to buy animal body parts. And it was really distressing to see that. But at the end of the day, we are there to document it, and we're doing the best we can.
So your documentary that's coming out, it's basically shadowing Jill and Slaughterfree New York City and their efforts. Is it telling a story, or is it just documenting the horrors that are going on in the New York wet market?
No, it's trying to put the whole effort into context. So all the work that they've been doing for a couple years and the work that they're doing now, that's now leading up to finally getting press coverage, finally getting local news coverage, even a little bit of national coverage, and putting all that into context of it now leading to, Linda Rosenthal and the New York State Assembly actually taking notice and putting out some legislation. And then the question is, will something come from that? And so basically it's just documenting the whole process from beginning to end to see if and what will happen with this effort.
And what is going to happen? I mean, right now we have a prime time. We're front and center because of COVID. We're making world news due to wet markets. Although now there's these conspiracy theories that came out of a lab in China, and I'm getting text messages from people who want to justify eating meat. But what do you see happening? I know legislation's being proposed. I know it's a popular argument that the Congress, both sides of the aisle, are urging the World Health Organization to have a global ban, which would, by the way, be really hard to enforce. But what do you see happening? Do you see this happening as a sweeping United States shutdown of wet markets, or is this going to go state by state by state? Maybe Jill, as I know Slaughterfree has many chapters, so maybe you're best to answer this question. You're head of the New York chapter. I know Robert is in Chicago. So what do you guys anticipate?
Like my connection is dodgy. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, excellent. If it gets crazy, I'll stop the camera and maybe that will help.
Okay.
So this will really have to be a local issue for quite some time, unfortunately, and that's mostly due to the fact that the regulations and the agency's handling of those regulations changes from city to city, state to state. So the unfortunate fact.
Okay, I think we're losing her. So.
Well, I can jump in a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean,
why don't you jump in? All right, hang on. Let me put you up, Jordan. So why don't you let us know? I know you're focusing your documentary on New York, right? Because that's where you are. And
right. That's where I am. And what's interesting, at least for us as filmmakers, is that this isn't just activists sort of yelling at the sky that nothing might happen. They've had wins in the past locally. Whether it's Fogua on the city level, but also Linda Rosenthal, who's this one of our assembly members, is putting out legislation. She's had some really important legislation passed semi-recently, and so there's a real possibility that something might happen. However, knowing the landscape of politics in this country and our love for meat and dairy, I'm skeptical that something will happen, but the possibility of something happening is very real.
Okay, and just so you know, because I know we're going to talk tomorrow, because I'm going to talk for your documentary. One of the things that I filed in New York is a petition for rulemaking. And what that would do, it's not like writing legislation and it's not like filing a lawsuit, but what it is it's a formal legal petition, which I filed on behalf of New York residents, and every state is different. So some states allow for petitions for rulemaking, which would require an agency response, and some do not require an agency response. On the federal level, which is what PCRM filed against the Surgeon General, that requires an agency response. In New York, they have a proposed bill in the Senate that says that if you have 100 or more New York resident signatures, that they literally say that their constitution, their state constitution, should be like the federal constitution, and that it should really be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So in my petition for rulemaking, I quoted their bill and got the 100 or more, we got tens of thousands of New York resident signatures. And we followed literally the outline of the bill to get lawmakers' attention. But because that bill hasn't passed, there is no required agency response bill in New York, but I filed it in alignment with the proposed bill in hopes that lawmakers would say, you know what, this follows the bill that we said we were going to pass and that we planned to pass, and maybe we should pay attention to this one. But they may or may not. Just like everything with the law, it could take a long time. But if they decided to pay attention, what's different with what I filed versus legislation or litigation, which could take years, it could create an immediate shutdown for 90 days. And it would be a 90-day moratorium where in that time, it allows lawmakers to, 1, draft and pass legislation, 2, for a lawsuit to be filed, 3, for a rule to be made and passed. And then if in the 90 days, nothing happens, you can extend it another 60 days, another 60 days, another 60 days by vote. So it's a popular argument. I don't know why it hasn't happened yet.
Well, and to get any of that to happen or to speed that up is having broad public support. And I think the more people really see what's going on in these places, I think people still either don't know or don't want to know how bad it is.
They don't know.
It's worse than you think it is by a million times.
Right.
What is it going to take? We are seeing glaciers melting. We are seeing the rapid wildfires in Australia and in Amazon. Now we are in a global pandemic. What is it going to take to pick people up? Now we're in our homes. It's no longer a personal choice. We are all forced to be in our homes because of the rapid spread of bacteria and viruses in meat markets. Because certain people have an addiction to eating animals. Again, what is it going to take?
Right. Yeah, Jamie, all good points. Jamie, I'm just going to say, if you're connected to any other device on your Wi-Fi, try to disconnect it because you're saying good things, and I want everyone to hear you.
I'm so bad with this technology. But millennial, but whatever.
Yeah. So, all right, let's, transition into, unless you guys want to add anything on the wet markets or the documentary, we'll certainly keep everybody posted. As soon as it's released, we'll announce it. You guys can come back on. You can talk about it. We'll push it out. Hopefully it'll get 14 million plus views like the last documentary you did. Congratulations. And Jill, I know you've been on the front lines for a very long time, so it's about time that you're getting recognized for all your efforts. You're really busy doing interviews after interviews. So is there anything that anyone would like to add or jump in before we move on to the topic of slaughterhouse workers, which is...
I mean, maybe just one more thing is that the UN, the United Nations, made a statement that's saying the greatest threat to human beings is either climate change or a pandemic. Yet,
the greatest threat to human beings is what or pandemic?
Climate change or pandemic.
Climate change,
and
right.
Both related to animal agriculture.
Right.
Yet we're not seeing any changes with that.
Correct. Yes. So, right. So one thing that you'll hear a lot about on this network is that animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change, which there's a white paper that has been done about this by Dr. Rao. But with mainstream media, when we have this discussion, it's much smarter to say that it's a leading change of global climate change. But you're right, it is definitely, undisputably, a cause of global climate change and pandemics. All right, let's move on to the topic of slaughterhouse workers and what is going on there. I want to bring Laura back up. Let's see if I can add everybody onto the screen together. Okay, Laura, sorry, you're a little bit blocked out. Let me see if I can move you up. You're a lawyer here, right, Laura? So you and I have a little bit of background that we can discuss, there you go, regarding these slaughterhouse workers, right? I don't know if the Humane Society of the U.S. is addressing the slaughterhouse crisis, or even let me back up for a second. Are you guys doing anything with wet markets there that you can talk to, that you can speak to?
Yeah, on the wet market front, HSUS is working at the federal, state, and local level to try and get wet markets banned in this country, and then through our affiliate, Humane Society International, working to get wet markets and wildlife trade banned globally, significantly in China and Korea. And I know HSI is definitely making progress on shutting down dog and cat meat trade, which is also a problem with regards to live animal trafficking. And I believe 2 provinces now in China recently have banned dog and cat meat trade. And I believe on here at home, on the federal level, our affiliate Humane Society Legislative Fund had worked with Congress, different Congress men and women to write a letter to global health organizations like the WHO and FAO to really take strong action against wet markets.
So are you guys, can you speak to it? Are you drafting any legislation that is going to be announced, or is this something that is?
I can't speak to that.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. So, all right, let's move on to slaughterhouse topic, because that is totally related to wet markets, but wet markets are unregulated slaughterhouses, and then we have our regulated factory farms. As we know, the news has made it front and center that these slaughterhouses are the biggest outbreaks of coronavirus in the country. And we have, I think, 20 workers have died, 20 have died, 5,000 are sick. The numbers are climbing. And last week, Trump signed in an executive order after Tyson made a cry that the food supply chain is breaking. Trump signed this executive order saying that the meat industry and slaughterhouses are critical infrastructure and the workers are essential, and therefore they must go to work. Now, workers don't want to go to work. They feel, one worker said, I don't feel essential, I don't feel critical, I feel sacrificed. This executive order came at the heels of a lawsuit in Virginia that was filed against one of the meat giants for not protecting their workers. So in essence, this executive order now makes it impossible or very difficult for a worker to bring a successful workers' comp claim, a successful injury claim, or a successful wrongful death claim, because what the executive branch has done is basically shielded them from all liability. So as a lawyer, what can a worker do? I mean, is there any way to get around this for them? And it's not a question. Like, I'm trying to figure it out myself. Like I don't know if the ACLU should get involved. Like, what is the answer?
So I just to be clear, HSUS isn't a part of that litigation, and I haven't had a lot of time to look into it very carefully. But to my understanding, the executive order and the DPA, right, doesn't provide carte blanche immunity on all liability, especially when it comes to broad police powers of the state and tort liability. Basically, the DPA prioritizes federal contracts, right? So procurement contracts, and allows for a shield of liability for you to kind of cancel competing contracts, right? And so it basically, it's not as an overarching authority, I think, as people are making out to be. And the government clearly is trying to claim that it is, and will use it as a sword. But hopefully we can convince the courts that it's not this overarching immunity of liability, and that through an executive order, even claiming the DPA, you cannot force companies to produce if they do not have the capacity to produce, right? So if a factory was on fire, they wouldn't be able to complete production, right? So similarly, right, contagion risk in a factory is just as though it were on fire. They wouldn't be able to have the capacity to produce, and so therefore they're not forced to open. But obviously companies
forced to open.
will want to.
Right. They're not forced to open. It's up to, like, I know Tyson, I think it was in the news today, is keeping one of them, or closed one over the weekend for some deep cleaning after the executive order, because there was such a spike in sick workers that they felt like they had no choice. But no, they're not forced to open. But those that open and then the workers that get sick, do the workers have any recourse? I mean, they can't collect unemployment because it's now their choice to not go to work. And they are literally forced to put their lives on the line so the world can have access to meat, so they can have money, so their family can survive. And yet at the same time, they're risking their life and their family's lives, because at work, they can pick up this deadly coronavirus, which is highly contagious, and bring it home and wipe out the whole family. I mean, what rights do they have?
It's completely unfair, and it exacerbates another example of the vast inequalities between, the working class and everyone else, right? Because we are prioritizing company profits over the health and safety of these workers. Hopefully, local governments, state governments can come together and provide them with some safety nets for if, they choose. They're in a horrible predicament where they really don't have any choices. They have the choice to go to work and risk infection or death, or the choice to not work and not be able to afford food or housing or medicine. So
this is a civil rights issue. I see this as a civil rights issue. These are low-wage earners. They're immigrants. It's a class system. It's arguably racist, and they have been stripped of basic civil liberties. The way I see it, I'm an injury lawyer, by trade. I've done tons of personal injury and wrongful death cases. I don't know the way around this one, to be honest, but I'm sure there's a creative legal way. That's why I want to pick every lawyer's mind about it to figure it out. And I really hope that the ACLU would get involved in something like this, because all lives matter at this point. It's all connected. Taking the animals' lives is now taking the human lives for the workers. And then by taking the animal lives, it's ruining our airwaves, and we're getting these deadly pathogens that are spreading and killing us. So with that, let's talk about Jill. I'm going to bring you back. Tyson said that there is a food supply shortage, and that is why Trump signed an executive order deeming it critical infrastructure. Today, Wendy's put out a news alarm saying that they have a food supply shortage because they don't have enough hamburger meat. Do we have a food supply shortage? I mean, let's get honest here.
Well, at this stage, we don't, because we have so many alternatives to meat and dairy available that anyone can eat anything else. And regardless of the debates on, optimal nutrition of different diets, we have millions of vegans on the planet right now proving that that's the case. So no, this is not a matter of a necessary, essential food item being in shortage. And also, this is another example of our country falsely propping up a business that's not sustainable. These are all industries that are getting bailed out by the government year on year. They're subsidized by our tax dollars, which is absurd. What other, there's not very many other businesses that are subsidized with our tax dollars this way, and certainly not to the extent that the meat industry is and the dairy industry. And then now we're facing this idea of trying to make these plants, socially distanced and safer somehow. That's going to make them even more expensive to operate, going to make them even less.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, your audio just went again. But get what you're saying. Animals do not need to be food, and there doesn't need to be a food supply shortage. All right, there you go. Looks like everyone's having a little bit of connection issues. Jamie, let's see, did you fix your issue? I know you had a video I wanted to show. Are you able to put up the screen share so I can show everybody? Let's end on some positive news. So Jamie, over the weekends, if she can pull it up, I can show you. But after filming and putting her life on the line to go into these wet markets, watching all these birds slaughtered and other animals slaughtered on scene, she, over the weekend, was able to rescue a little baby pigeon that she found in the streets. And there's the pigeon in the palm of her hand. The video on Facebook is, let's see if you have it up, Jamie. No, looks like you're not able to pull it up. Well, if you want to see that video, it's on Jamie Logan's Facebook page. And this little pigeon was in the street and had, what Jamie, was it a broken wing? Can't hear you. Your image is better. Oh, looks like maybe you muted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, and your sound sounds good. Great.
So out of the corner of my eye, I see this little bird, almost looked like he was having a bird bath. So I look over and I'm like, oh, that's cute. And then I walk a little closer and he was like basically drowning in this puddle. And he was on his back and his wings were like flapping. So I happened to have gloves on and gloves with me. And I put them on, picked him up out of the puddle. And I got in touch with a bird rescuer out of Brooklyn. So I got him all wrapped up in a towel, in my car with me, thank God. And basically, he had a broken beak. It must have been either from getting hit by a car or from flying to a window.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what happened. So he was either hit by a car or flew into a window. Do you know if the bird made it?
So so right now, as of right now, he's okay. He's just being rehabilitated and resting in a cage. And the thing is, like, when we see these animals like pigeons on the street, most people would just walk away. But the truth is, it's like where we can help, all lives matter. And so we really should try. There's so many different resources out there. All I Rescued Birds is where I went with the bird, and they helped out so much.
Yes, and I remember during Caporo, you had another picture on Facebook of you running away with some birds in hand that you were rescuing from that horrific scene.
That was horrific. We got a lot of birds that weekend, but first night, I'll never forget, I had a little bag with me. I wasn't really planning on doing a big rescue or anything. Just so happened that there was a shed with birds in them, and so I was like, all right, I'm just going to walk by and see if I could say hello. And of course, I threw a few in my bag, and the bag broke, and it went everywhere. So, but we saved them.
How many birds did you save?
And but that weekend, over 50.
How many? 50?
Over 50. It's just don't make count, but part of the saving is yes. Part of saving is finding placement. So it's like I live with my parents. Am I going to come home with like 50 birds? Like they're going to be like, you're out of here.
Right. Of course. Yes. Okay. Well, we like the feel-good stories because sometimes there's just a whole lot of bad news. And speaking of another feel-good story, I have Kristen here. Kristen is the co-founder of Animal Rescue Force ARF in West Palm Beach. And she has dedicated her life to rescuing all these animals out of animal care and control in Palm Beach County, where that is a kill shelter. And last week, Palm Beach County Animal Control was on World News Tonight cheering because of all the empty cages. So Kristen, I know you go in weekly, right, to go rescue these animals out that are facing when their time is up. Does your sound okay?
Yeah, just unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah, I go there very often. And even though it was awesome, that it's actually kennel 2 that was empty. So a lot of people thought the whole entire shelter was empty of dogs. There were still some dogs in kennel 1, but that was the first time the second kennel was actually empty, which was great.
The first time in history of animal care and control.
Right, correct, yes.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. And how many at ARF, which is a nonprofit, and you guys go in weekly? Are you still going in weekly right now, by the way, with the coronavirus to rescue animals out?
It's a little different setup now. If you want to rescue a dog, you can visit with it for a short bit, and cats, they'll just bring it right outside to you. So you're not allowed in the facility at the moment, but you can still rescue.
Okay.
So
And
we're still at it.
And at ARF, have you pretty much had unprecedented adoptions and fostering, like animal care and control? What is the trend that you're seeing?
March was slow, but I think people started overcoming their fears. I think in general, people might have thought in the past, hey, I'm going to foster. And with the pandemic, they really stepped it up. So we've had more offers for fostering more dogs and cats than ever in the last month. So it's been really nice.
About how many dogs and cats do you think you fostered out and adopted out in the last month?
We probably fostered out about 15 cats and 1 dog.
Okay.
Or adopted out, sorry. And we've taken in probably 5 new fosters.
Oh, okay. And do you have plans to keep up this good work? I mean, some animals here, our farm animals, are really suffering. At least our cats and dogs have some good news and some good homes to go to. Do you have any plans in place to keep this going after COVID is no longer a crisis?
Yeah, we certainly do. And our volunteers at our adoption center have really stepped it up. They've kept coming in and caring for the animals. I know there's some people have fears, but we have some really great volunteers that the virus hasn't scared them off. So we're able to keep doing what we do. Okay.
And is there anything that you would want the world to know during this time? Let me ask you something before we get to that. Is this a trend that you think is just in Palm Beach County, or is this a trend that is across the country during the pandemic, that our animals, our cats and dogs, are being fostered out and adopted?
I think what's happened in the last 20 years that I've seen is a lot of new rescue groups have popped up. In Palm Beach County anyway, when I first started volunteering, there weren't really that many that would get animals out of our county shelter, but now there's probably over 100 rescues that can or do. So I think people are understanding more about rescue and want to get involved, and a lot of people are just going for it on their own with some friends, and a lot of little groups are popping up all over, and that really has made a difference.
And I know when ARF started Animal Rescue Force, you guys had a pet mobile or an animal shuttle where you would take animals out of the county shelter and bring them to the people where you were able to successfully adopt out, I think, thousands of animals. Are you guys still doing that, or what is your method to get your animals adopted now?
Yeah, the pet mobile was something one of our original co-founders who originally started an animal rescue force in New Jersey, her and her husband decided, let's bring animals to the people. So we're proud that a lot of other rescues have followed that lead and also have gotten mobile vehicles. But unfortunately, in our case, our RV turned out to be a bit of a money pit and actually broke down on a busy highway here, I-95, when I was driving it, caught on fire.
Oh my
So
God.
we switched to a van.
Were the animals okay?
All the animals, yeah, they were all fine. It was just a tiny little engine fire. But anyway, the RV is takes a lot of maintenance and stuff, so we switched to a van, but we still do take the van out and about, and we utilize more of the locations where we adopt animals. We transport the animals in our van, which actually needs some TLC, but we still are mobile, very mobile.
Mm-hmm. So if anyone's in Florida, or specifically South Florida, they can go to animalrescueforce.org, and all the cats and dogs are listed there with their name and their profile. So if you're interested in adopting or fostering, you can go there. And Kristen, is there anything you would want viewers to know about your organization? Is there any featured pet that you'd like to bring to everyone's attention?
I'd like everyone to know that we do really care to make best fit with our pets. We're always looking for new volunteers, especially new fosters. We are featuring, I would mention Benjamin, who is at our adoption center. He's a really big boy. He'll give you kisses, and then the next few minutes he might give you a nibble. So he's actually quite a presence there, but we would like to have him fostered or adopted because some of our volunteers are actually a little afraid of him. So it's not the best place for him right now.
I'm not afraid of him. You just have to, when he tries to nibble, you just have to stick your hand in his mouth even more, and then he gets disarmed. Like, oh, you're not afraid of me?
Yeah, unfortunately, not everyone's comfortable sticking their hand in a cat's mouth. I wish they all were, but one thing I would say I've noticed during the pandemic is, and even just before, is a lot of people were looking for older senior pets and coming to our rescue because they couldn't find them elsewhere. So I would just say to other rescues that, try to save some seniors because there are people actually looking for them.
And I think my aunt was one of them. My aunt was wanting an older cat. She wanted a calm cat, and she was interested. I know when you had a cat, Roxy, that I tried to help adopt out, and I took pictures, and my aunt liked Roxy, and then we got Roxy adopted, and then the next day she went to the Humane Society to go find a cat that looked exactly like Roxy, who is a senior cat, who she just bought this huge cat tower for with catnip, and the cat doesn't want anything to do with the catnip or the cat tower. She's a senior cat. So pairing up seniors with seniors is a positive thing. Yeah.
Right. Definitely.
And okay, so we are running out of time. I want to add everybody back. Is anyone else here fostering during this time? No, any foster animals or just animal advocates?
Just pigeon rescuers.
I already have 4 rescue cats living with me, so I have a pretty full house.
4 rescue cats. Okay, Jamie, any pets?
I have my dog Daisy. Yep, and I've just been basically helping people get in touch with rescue groups and whatnot.
Jordan, any pets?
No.
Busy.
There's one of my rescues outside right now.
We don't have any pets either.
You're busy fighting for them.
I would add.
Oh, look.
Yeah, I would add fostering takes a lot of time, so it is a time cruncher.
Jill, let's put Jill's cat up on the screen. That's so cute.
That's Lucy Pumpkin enjoying her outside time on the balcony. This is her dedicated outside time each day. So she was rescued upstate from a gas station.
Aw, gas station. So you found her there?
I did not, but a friend of mine did. So she is now living with me forever, and she loves her outdoor playpen.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I think this was a fun panel and a fun day. And I hope that we inspired the world to sort of turn vegan. How long has everyone here been vegan? Jamie, I know you said 2 years and you're quite the activist. You've probably converted how many people at this time? 100?
Couple hundred, yeah.
Couple hundred. Yeah, you're convincing. She's great with Be-Veg sales, by the way. She's a superstar. You put her on the phone, she can sell ice to an Eskimo. So
well,
Jordan
with his videos, I mean, I'm happy to, be present and show people, through film and video what's going on. So I think that even getting 14 million views on that was huge in helping people make.
Yeah, scrolling through the comments, there's some really absurd, upsetting comments, but there was definitely a few hundred people who at least claim that they're going to rethink their food choices.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How long have you been vegan, Jordan?
I've been vegetarian for 20 years, vegan for about 5 or 6, but I wish it was longer.
Yeah. Laura, how long have you been?
22 years I've been vegan.
20?
Yeah, a little over 20 years.
Wow. And Jill?
A lifelong vegetarian, and I'm nearly 14 years vegan.
Nice. Kristen, are you vegetarian or?
Yeah, I've been vegetarian over my half my life. I'm vegan during Lent, and I'm still a vegan wannabe one of these days. Hopefully soon I'll make the jump.
You got this.
Well, awesome. We'll talk to Jamie. She'll convince you. She's great. All right. Well, thank you guys. And, go vegan and let's change the world and end all the animal cruelty.
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.